And then the second question was, what should you expect from NCOs? To expect your NCOs to be knowledgeable and assist you, not just right now as you're a new lieutenant, but be able to assist you throughout your time in that unit or at that base. Depending on your job, everyone's different, but some will work closely with NCOs, and then some of you will work more closely with senior NCOs. So it just depends on the dynamic of where you are. Because for you, you'll be like overarching, you'll know like the big picture of what's going on. And your NCO should know like what's going on day to day. So if you need to be able to go to your NCOs and say, hey, somebody came to me, I need to know more about this situation. Your NCO should be knowledgeable and should be able to tell you everything that happened or the nitty gritty of everything going with that. That's all I have. I'll go over to Sergeant Holland and then we'll take some questions.
Hey everyone, my name is Sergeant Holland. So also here at Det 145, Florida State. First off, I want to say thanks for setting this up, Captain Mo and your team. I've been in ROTC for almost 4 years and there's never been anything like this. So, or at least that I've seen. So that's really good on y'all. And to the cadets out there, their checks were already going to hit their bank accounts on the 1st and 15th, whether they went out of their way to set this up or not. So this has been a big ticket item. He's put in a lot of work, so thanks for that. Also, thanks for scheduling myself and Sergeant McGee before the senior NCOs and shirts, because they would be hard to follow. Those will be your, they really know, like Sergeant McGee and myself have about 18 years between us in the Air Force. They probably have that, each one of them on their own. So definitely thanks for the scheduling there. All right, and thanks to the cadets for being here. So let me jump on into the questions here. First one was recommendations for a new lieutenant. So first thing I would say is to show up ready to learn. We all know that when you get there, you're new, you don't really know a lot, but as long as you come up and you're eager, you're showing up ready to go, that'll go a long way. Also, trust the commander to put you in the right spot and the right people around you to, grow you, teach you, and show you how to do this Air Force thing that we all signed up to do. Second thing, get to know your people on not just a work level, but on a personal level as well. We're not just all robots like people think military, we all have families, all your airmen, they're gonna have families, get to know them. I had a commander once, we had about 500 people in the squadron and he knew everybody by first name, which is incredible because I work with 6 people and I have a hard time remembering their name sometimes. So that's incredible. I don't expect all of y'all to do that because I know I could never do it, but it really, when you knew that he cares about you and he actually knows, he even knew, my dog's name, crazy stuff like that. But that really goes a long way, especially to young airmen who, they've been in the, military for 4 or 5 years and they know you've been off at college for 4 or 5 years. It goes a long way to when you get there to know that, you have their best interests at heart and they know that they can come to you, kind of like Sergeant McGee was saying as well. So moving on, third one, my last thing is take care of yourself. So I know everybody's eager. We've been working at this for at least 3 to 4 years, depending on when you came in. So some of y'all more if you're a 5-year. So don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't let, your drive to be the great new lieutenant drowned out. I see there's a cadet, Ricardo Jimenez on there. Don't let, cadet or Lieutenant Jimenez, the great new lieutenant, drowned out Ricardo Jimenez, the person, because the Air Force is a great way of life. I personally enjoy it, but it gets tough sometimes. And if you don't take a step back, take care of yourself, all your needs, it can take a toll. Make sure you have a good balance, good people around you. You can talk to people. And once you have got that down, make sure that your airmen know the exact same thing. So those are some recommendations for new lieutenants. Second question is examples of a bad and good lieutenant. Running out of time, so I'm gonna do it quick. So without mentioning any names, example of a bad, not really a bad lieutenant, but a bad instant in this lieutenant's career. We were in a 2 deep position, just me and him. So I had been given a big project. I had drafted up an email that was going to go out to the masses, all the group commanders on base, squadron commanders, but I wasn't finished. It was in my drafts. And so I had saved it in my draft emails, which automatically in that org box automatically has my signature block on it. So I go home for the day and somebody gets a call saying, hey, we need this. And they go in there, see the draft and send it out before it's a finished product. So I get to work the next day, and I had seen that the MSG commander had emailed me, a senior airman, and I figured it was just a CC. I had just been CC'd on it, but no, it was actually just to me, but also reply all to the rest of the base leadership saying, hey, this is not a good product. What's going on here? This clearly shouldn't have been sent to me. And one of our other leadership teams said, yeah, that must have been our exec assistant sent that out without, the proper chain. And I turned to the LT and I said, LT, this got sent to like an hour after I went home yesterday. But what had happened, fire started somewhere and he saw it there, he sent it out. But he wouldn't take the hit when we figured out that it wasn't ready, because he was a great guy. Like I said, he was not a great exec. And he was already on the hot seat. He said, hey, I can't take the hit for this. I'm already about to be fired, but I'll make sure, you're nothing bad. You're still got a good, rating, but I can't take this. So, right then and there, I knew, how can I, trust him as a boss? He was still a good guy, but I knew when things hit the fan, it was his interest above mine, which everybody's got to, look out for number one, but not to the point of throwing your airman under the bus. So I, wish him the best. I'm sure he's gonna have a great career, but that was one thing. I don't see how anybody could ever work with him in a trusting way, knowing that when things come down to it, he's gonna look out for himself. Last thing, good lieutenant. There's great lieutenants, by far outweigh the bad ones. His replacement, actually, when he left, came in, made a pretty big boo-boo on the first couple weeks, and the group commander asked him, hey, what happened here, in an email? And I saw it and I started looking like, ooh, how's he gonna play this one off? Because he could have, but he said, sir, that's me. I messed up. That's my responsibility. I messed up. It won't happen again. And we talked about it. I was like, hey, LT, that was pretty good of you the other day. I was waiting to see what you were gonna say. And then he's like, yeah, I mean, just do what you got to do. I messed up. I'm gonna take the hit. Later on, been there another 6-7 months. It was just the three of us in the office. And at this point, it was already determined that this lieutenant was, doing great things. He was a fast burner. He's doing great things. And somebody mentioned it, and the commander actually admitted that that was a test. He knew that he could weasel his way out or come up with an excuse, but he knew what the actual story was. He just wanted to hear him take responsibility for his error, even though there was been no way of proving that he actually did something wrong. So that went a long way for me. I've tried to do the same thing in my career since then. But yeah, that was a good lieutenant. Like I said, most lieutenants, most officers, really good. Every once in a while, you'll have a lieutenant or a coworker that's going to have a bad moment. Doesn't mean they're a bad lieutenant or a bad officer, bad enlisted, but every once in a while you do run into some. But I'm sure it won't be anybody on this call. So anyway, I took up too much time. Is there any questions? There's supposed to be 5 minutes. We got 2. So maybe any question, singular, if anybody has any, myself and Sergeant McGee can answer that the best we can.
So I currently don't have any in the chat, but I have some previous from polls. So you can attack either, whichever one you want, some common ones or What is the most common mistake a new lieutenant makes? And you can say from the perspective of an NCO, as well as another one popular is, what is an acceptable level of friendliness, specifically with NCOs, especially since they're near our same age?
Sergeant McGee, I feel like I've spoke most of this time. Would you want to
Sure.
tackle one of those?
I'll attack the second one, the friendliness, with us being close in age. I'm trying to fix it. Actually, an interesting I would say in one of my squadrons, I was really close with one of our lieutenants. I mean, I wouldn't say that you couldn't be friends with your more so the NCOs. I wouldn't say the airmen. So there's a fine line there. But the NCOs, as long as you're of age, and nothing crazy is going on, and keep the professional and the personal separate, because you don't want to get that image of you being buddy buddy and then it going back to work and there's seeming some favoritism towards you, giving some favoritism towards your so-called friend buddy versus somebody else that's not so-called friends with you on a personal level. So just make sure you can keep the personal and the professional separate. Other than that,
Yeah, Sergeant McGee, if I may, I completely agree. So as long as you can make sure that it's professional and you can ensure that there's not going to come back as some way of favoritism. It's not uncommon on, base first Fridays, everybody goes to the base club, and plays cornhole, have a beer. As long as everybody's of age, it's professional. Those are good mentoring times. So as long as you're within common, common sense that it's professional, then you shouldn't have a problem. Now that's a beer at, the Scott Club or wherever you are. That's not going down to downtown and, going to a club till 3 a.m. together. There's definitely a difference. And if you're ever in question about it, ask the first sergeant or ask your supervisor, the commander, if this is, deemed to be within realms of acceptability. Captain Mo, are we over our time?
No, I actually had you guys until 14:50, so you guys have a few minutes left.
Oh, sweet.
If you have
3
any,
more minutes.
if you have any parting wisdom or any last advice.
Captain
Okay.
Back, I don't know your name, ma'am. What was that first question? See if we can answer that one.
Yeah, so the first one was, what is the most common mistakes new lieutenants make?
I don't want to say that new lieutenants come in hot-headed. I may have seen it a couple of times. I haven't seen it a whole lot more so. But yeah, just make sure you don't come in hot-headed, thinking like, oh yeah, I'm a new lieutenant, you need to salute me, this and that there. Just be yourself, in all aspects of it. Not even for this question, but just be yourself, be genuine. Don't try to just be somebody that you're not because you have rank now. Because there is somebody that can always outrank you. So that's what I have to say about that. Just be yourself. Take care of your people and enjoy it. I mean, at the same time, you're creating a career for yourself. So make sure you're enjoying yourself, because at the end of the day, if you don't like your job, you're going to hate going to work every day. Your coworkers are not going to want to be around you. Your airmen are going to feel that sense of you not wanting to be there either. And so that can go off on them. And then it just makes a bad unit to be in. So enjoy yourself, learn, be eager to learn, and just have fun.
Yep, definitely. I agree with her. This sounds bad to say, but the Air Force has been around for a long time before you will be in it here soon, hopefully. And it'll go on a long time after you are back to being a normal civilian. So Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Enjoy it. The fact that y'all are all here, it's getting close to, finals, the end of the year. I know everybody's got midterm, or not midterms, finals to study for. A lot going on right now. So the fact that y'all are here and you don't have to be, I think says a lot. I think everyone is going to do great things. So if you ever have any questions, you can always reach back to us or your cadre as well. Go to them. They've probably, been in just as long or longer than we have as NCOs. So lean on them. They'll get you where you need to be. And again, thank you to Captain Mo and your team. And thank you to Sergeant McGee being a great coworker and yeah, I guess unless Sergeant McGee has anything, we'll turn it back over to Captain Mo.
I did. One last thing. Make every assignment your own. Of course, there's been lots of talk out there that there are horrible bases. It's only horrible as you make it, or it can be a great base to you. I've been stationed at Cannon and I absolutely loved the base. Can't say the outside surroundings, but the base was actually one of my favorite assignments. So make sure that you don't go into these so-called bad bases or horrible bases with that stigma. Just make every base what it is. You can learn new things about yourself. So just enjoy yourself. See you guys around, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. A virtual round of applause. Thank you guys so much. Now you guys got the NCO perspective. We'll now transition to the senior NCO perspective along with the first sergeant perspective. So Master Sergeant Hunt, over to you.
Hey, thanks, sir. So is there another senior NCO on, or is it just me?
I believe it's just you.
Oh, perfect. All right. I can talk too, so hopefully I'll take up all the time. Just so everyone knows, I'm not the first sergeant for the Southeast region. He's busy, and I think I'm by default the only regional shirt that's available now. So, but just to put everybody at ease, I grew up in Niceville, Florida, right down the road from you guys, from those unit FSU. So I feel a connection to Florida, so we're good. So yeah, Master Sergeant James Hunt, Northwest Region first shirt over in Colorado Springs. Been a first sergeant for about 3.5 years. Been here. I was also in security forces and the ops group at Schriever, and I was also the FSS shirt at Osan in Korea for a year. And that was really fun. Prior to that, I'm a medic by trade. Spent years in trauma surgery, 3 years as an instructor, and deployed a bunch of times with some really cool people. So that's kind of a background about me. I got a lot of different knowledge about a bunch of different things. Especially being a first sergeant coming from medical, it gave me a big perspective on how the Air Force should run versus how medical military runs. So jumping into the questions. Yeah. So how should they interact, or first lieutenants interact with senior NCOs? So a little different than the NCO perspective. So senior NCOs by law are charged with mentoring company grade officers. And so where the NCOs focus on helping you learn a skill set with the trade and being technically proficient, we're charged with making sure that you guys become effective and good leaders from different levels. So obviously, when you're a first lieutenant or a second lieutenant, you're going to be charged with a little less responsibility. But as you move up in the ranks to captain, you get a little more, and flight commanders and so on. So we are here to assist and really developing your own leadership style. For me as a first sergeant too, is I take that a little bit step further, and I'm really involved with the chief, with commanders, and developing our leadership mentality when it comes to an entire unit. Any CGO that reaches out to me, and there's a lot on, hey, sure, how should we handle this? First of all, I'm going to treat you the same way I'm going to treat a commander. I'm going to, behind closed doors, hey, this is my opinion. This is my experience. This is what I've seen. Here's my guidance on that. Take it or leave it. It's your choice. And I think good CGOs across the board gather as much information as they can to develop themselves, develop their actions going forward. What should I expect? What should you expect from your senior NCOs? So I'll say this, just like everybody else, not all senior NCOs are created equal. You're going to have some excellent master sergeants out there. You're going to have some excellent chiefs out there, and you're going to have some that maybe aren't as great, or maybe that don't really fit your leadership style. So I tell this to everybody that I brief, from airmen all the way up, is you don't pick your supervisors, but you can pick your mentors. So I would say as a brand new second lieutenant, pick the people that you want to be, whether it's an officer or a senior NCO or even, you know, tech sergeants and staff sergeants, and pick their brains. Not everybody is going to be a perfect mold or a perfect fit for you. So pick the things that you find endearing, and maybe pick some other qualities from other people. But you should have a senior NCO in your unit that's, depending on what your job is, that's right there with you. And so we come to the table with a lot of experience, especially with management. So learn from us, ask a lot of questions, and then build that trust. So I can tell you that my best relationships with officers have been in that trusting environment. So when I work with commanders and we go behind closed doors and we have honest conversations, there's trust that knows when that door opens, that I've got their back and they've got mine, and we are a unified front. And so from a lieutenant, you can definitely have that same relationship. You can go in closed doors and say, hey, what should we do with this situation? And talk it out. But when that door opens, expect that they should have your back, and that there is a quality too, that of teamwork where you've got theirs as well. One thing that we are not responsible for is we're not responsible for that decision like officers are, and that's why you get paid. From day one of commissioning, you outrank every single enlisted person, and a good senior NCO will uphold you to that while teaching you, which is a kind of an art form in itself. Again, adding on top of that, what should you expect from the first sergeant? So we, along with all the senior NCOs, have that leadership experience, but we also have the experience when it comes to health, morale, welfare, discipline, direction, readiness, and we've got a pretty good pulse on what goes on within the base that you're on too. So if you've got a question about, hey, how should we handle this kind of unique situation? If we don't know it, we've got a network of people across the base where we can almost instantly just reach out and say, hey, do you guys have this going on? So not only are we kind of backdooring with different situations with the different first sergeants across the base, but we've also got a direct line to the command chief, who then has a much bigger perspective of what's going on. So we know that not every situation we've experienced already, but we also know that there's probably people that have. And so we're not big fans of reinventing the wheel, but finding the right answer through the gray areas on what's best for you, what's best for the airmen, what's best for the unit, situation, Air Force, and so on. How much time do I have? Let's see. I've got about 9 more minutes. All right. So recommendations for brand new lieutenants. Just like the NCOs nailed it. So know that you're coming in with a degree of education that most enlisted people, at least when you're a junior, don't have, but you're lacking that experience. As you move up in ranks, a lot of my senior NCO counterparts, we all have advanced degrees. So there's a breadth of experience, and then also a breadth of educational background as well. So come in, absorb things like a sponge, ask a lot of questions, but don't be afraid to lead. And so, you ask a lot of questions, and it's time to make that decision. Don't be hesitant when it comes to being in front of people, because especially in the military, we value people being able to make a decision and lead the people. We don't really want someone that sits there and debates things, especially public. That's a behind the closed doors chance. So recommendations, yeah, I mean, just be honest with yourself. I think it was Sergeant McGee said, know yourself, know your style, develop that, but absorb as much as you can from the Air Force, from the job, and then from your people that you're around. Examples of good and bad lieutenants. So I'll try and make this quick because I'm quickly running out of time. So a good friend of mine, we grew up in the medical world together as enlisted. She got out at 8 years and went to school, got a few degrees, and came back in as a second lieutenant. She worked briefly on the civilian side, so came into the Air Force with a chip on her shoulder on hey, I know more than you because I did this for a month in a civilian hospital type of deal, and it really just burned a lot of bridges. I think she's very capable, but it was the wrong mentality. It was I know what I'm doing, and you don't. Where she didn't really have that military background from an officer standpoint and a leadership standpoint, because she just got out as a very young staff sergeant. So I think she's learning, but she definitely gets herself into a little bit of trouble with that mindset. So I think that's just like the NCO said, the worst or second lieutenants or CGOs that I've seen are ones that are kind of stubborn and assume that they already know the right answers, even though there's different ways to go about things. The opposite side of that, I think, when it comes to lieutenants is I worked with a second lieutenant in security forces. He's an academy grad, very bright guy, but he also identified that he lacked on a lot of situational experience. And so we would have lots of long conversations in his office on how we would go about doing these types of things. But then I'd walk out there in front of his flight, and I treated him just like I treat every other commander, and that's where he's at. So he had, I think, the self-awareness that he didn't have all the answers, but he also had that confidence that when it's time to present the decision, that he did it in a tactful and professional way. And I had a lot of respect for that man. So I think those are two examples, and I respect both of the examples, but I think there's a good and a bad way to go about executing your duties, your expertise, and your responsibility. All right, so I got 5 more minutes for some questions. So does anybody have any questions for me? So the common ones I think I kind of covered as, good advice for second lieutenants and some common mistakes that I see. So anything unique out there for me, from my perspective?
I don't have any in the chat, but some from the polls that we've done previously. What are some good ways to empower the airmen that you lead?
So I think I think everybody across the board, big A, everybody wants to be recognized and heard. So good ideas come from all directions. And some of the best ideas and innovations that we've seen recently in the Air Force comes from brand new lieutenants and brand new airmen that come on board, and they see a process and they ask a question. Why are we doing it this way? There should be a better way. And I had a command chief tell me a story one time that when he was a young maintainer, he was in this contest for something, working on airplanes, and said, hey, there's a more efficient way to do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to win this contest. And so he did it this way, repairing some part, and he was disqualified because he didn't follow the TO. And so he got really kind of hurt on that and said, hey, I did it the best way. But then his leadership recognized that he had a good idea, and they submitted his way as the better way to do it. And it changed the way that all of Air Force maintainers do that process. And so instead of looking at it as the wrong way to do something, they looked at it as a better way to do something, even though that went against the status quo of the Air Force. And so they recognized this young airman, and he is now credited for improving, and I can't remember what airframe he was on, but improving the process of maintenance for that airframe. So recognizing good ideas when they are, and giving credit where credit's due. I think the story that we just heard about the lieutenant that was afraid to take the blame and put all the blame on a senior airman when it wasn't his fault, that's the wrong way. Recognizing and being honest in our own faults, and recognizing
Hey, Shirt, are you there?
I think it crashed in the middle of my
We got you back.
All right, so I don't know what everyone was heard, but yeah, recognize good ideas and give credit where credit's due. So if you have an airman that works for you, that does amazing things, recognize them by all means.
All right. Awesome, Shirt. Well, hey, really appreciate you coming out, taking time out of your busy day for us. Let's give them a good virtual round of applause. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely take your advice and use it for sure. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Captain, and thanks everybody else. And I'm going to jump off now, but if anybody has any follow-up questions, Captain Mo's got my email. So by all means, send them my way, and I'll give you my honest answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Shirt. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks. You too, sir.
All right, that was a great presentation. So we're gonna move on to our next one. We're gonna hear about start hearing about some of the more practical things you guys are gonna have to do once you become lieutenants and get to your base. So I'm going to turn it over to Captain McBride from MPF, from Personnel.
Good afternoon or morning to all of you. Thank you, Captain Mo, for allowing me to do a little short presentation on the MPF. I think this is probably the most highly anticipated portion of the briefing besides TMO and finance. So I'm going to share my screen. I just have a couple of slides to help guide us on this conversation. So the MPF, so the military personnel section is basically what the section that does everything personnel. So your orders, your ID card, making sure that your duty information is updated, making sure that you're actually placed on active duty. So I have the breakdown of each section. So when someone says, go to the MPF, it's just one section, but there are multiple sections within the MPF. So you have your customer service section, which includes your ID card. So when you get on active duty and you commission, you can go get your CAC. So the fancy ID that all the active duty members have, you can go get your CAC. And that's one of the very, very important things that you need to make sure you keep on you at all times. And then DEERS. So DEERS is basically what we use to input your information to make sure that you receive your medical benefits, your BX benefits, your fitness, all your base access goes into DEERS. So for those of you who have children or are married, so if you have a dependent, it's very important that you get your dependents placed into DEERS as soon as you get to your base and as soon as you in process. Customer service also does leave web. So if you have any issues with your leave, once you put your leave in, you can go to customer service as well. And some bases, it will be customer service or customer support. So then you have force management. So force management deals with your OPR. So your evaluation that will close out once a year. They deal with updating that, putting that into the system. Your duty status, so if you're present for duty or if you're on leave or whatever duty section or section that you're working in on your base, whatever unit you're in, they're responsible for updating that. And then UIF, so if you have anyone in your unit who is on a unfavorable information file or a control roster, they'll hold all of those files at the MPF in force management. And then lastly, you'll have career development. So career development, they make the orders. They deal with all assignment processes, and they also do re-enlistments for enlisted only. And then down at the bottom, I have the Air Force's Personnel Center, and that is basically one big MPF. That is the Air Force's MPF, and you can find them at www.afpc.af.mil, and then they also have a 1-800 number. So that was just like a brief rundown of what the MPF does and what they have. So now I'll get into the agenda that we have for today as far as in processing, what you all definitely need to know about and are probably questioning, and then just some common mistakes and some other things that you all should know. So receiving orders. So at your debt, your if you have a tech sergeant or staff sergeant, your admin personnel, they make your orders and they get those processed and sent up to AFPC for you. So once we get those back, we'll call you up and let you know that your orders are ready for pickup. So you don't have to do anything on your end in regards to getting orders besides coming picking them up. You don't have to sign for them. You don't have to do anything. You just have to come pick them up. And it's recommended that you have multiple copies of your orders, because when you get to your base and you're in process, you're going to have to keep giving people copies of your orders, depending on which base you're at or how they're doing in processing. So please keep at least 8 to 10 copies of your orders on you at all times. Keep them close hold. What I did was I made a binder of all of my PCS information. So I had my orders, anything that I can have. So TMO documents, finance documents, that way I had it all in one spot. And then in processing, what do you do? So when you in process to a base, you get there for one, and then you just figure out what unit you're working in. So some bases have what's called a CSS, so a commander support staff. And if your unit does have a CSS, you can in process with them. And what they do is they ask for your orders and they ask, okay, well, what section are you working in? They get all your information. They have you fill out a checklist. So I know one of the questions on the sheet, is there a checklist that we use? So yeah, so you'll have a checklist that you use. It'll just ask, when did you leave the last base, or when did you leave your home of record? It'll ask your phone number, if you have kids or not, just some general information. They'll put all that into their system, and then they'll also just put that on maybe like a file that they keep in the unit just for personnel information. And then what happens is all that information gets uploaded into Air Force system, and just basically it gains you in order for you to start getting paid. So some of the other questions, and finance can hit on this, is how do you get paid? So you have to go to the MPF first to get gained and in process in order to start getting paid. So you can't do finance and then MPF. You have to do MPF and then finance. So that's all you have to do for in processing. Just get to your CSS or get to the MPF. Some bases have in processing briefs, so mass in processing briefs, where they walk you through who's who and what's what, kind of like what I did on the first slide. They may collect all your different paperwork and do everything on the back end, aside from doing it right there in front of you. And then you have DEERS. So you'll have make sure your DEERS is updated. So if you have kids, make sure your kids are in DEERS, make sure the birth certificates are uploaded in there. If you're married, your marriage certificate. And then also just make sure your duty information is updated. So that is one of the common mistakes that new LTs do not do, is make sure that their unit is updated, their base is updated, all that good stuff. Because people are hand jamming this in, they're typing it in, and it's easily for stuff to get mixed up. So once you in process, let's say a couple weeks go by, you can go into VP, or not VPC, you can go to virtual MPF and just see, hey, is my base right? Is my name right? Is all my information in here to say I'm actually on active duty? So any changes, any updates, etc., just please make sure that that is right, because there's no one else to make sure it's right other than you. If it's wrong, no one's gonna know except for you. As far as the OPR process, that's another mistake new LTs don't really pay attention to. It's up to you to know when your OPR close out. It'll close out 364 days from the date you enter active duty. So if you want to write that down, you can write that down. So 364 days from when you enter active duty, it'll close out. And a good thing is to just make sure you're keeping track of everything that you do up until that date. So if you volunteered for some stuff, or your boss put you in charge of a big project, jot that down, because even though it's your supervisor's responsibility to write your OPR, they're going to ask you for inputs. So make sure you have something to give them other than just a blank Air Force Form 707, and just say, here, can you write my OPR? So your OPR closes out, 364 days after you enter active duty. And then following that, it will close out every year. And then there's some different specifications in there for different closeout dates. But the process, you'll get a notification. Your CSS will get a notification saying, hey, you're due for OPR, probably about 4 months out. And up from there, it's up to you to just, write that OPR, get it submitted as soon as possible. But just make sure you're tracking it. Make sure it's in your records. And my thing is, and I'll hit on this in the end, but my thing is, once it's signed and once you digitally sign it, keep a copy for yourself. That way, if anything happens to it, if it doesn't get uploaded by AFPC, or something crazy happens in the cyberspace world, you'll actually have it. Because again, like I said, people are actually, typing this stuff in, scanning this stuff in the whole time. And then just some other force support responsibilities. So PT testing, force support squadron, they're in charge of the fitness center, the DFAC, lodging, all that good stuff. So Airmen and Family Readiness Center. So that was a question. How do you get in contact with the Airmen and Family Readiness Center? So each base, usually before COVID, they would have a brief, and they would have Airmen Family Readiness Center, all these different resources come out to brief, and just say, hey, this is where we are. This is who we are. And here's how you contact us. But most bases now have websites, nice fancy websites. So once you find your base, you can just Google Airmen and Family Readiness Center. You can Google lodging, and just, find the phone numbers for those contact individuals. So that's all the slides I have. And then I can go ahead and just get into some some recommendations. I would recommend for you all to just keep everything in your records. So that was one thing, like, what paperwork do I need to keep in my records? Starting with your first duty station, keep everything. So everything that you sign, especially once you in process, ask for a copy, because you're brand new. So you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know if it's going to actually get put in there or if they're going to need another copy of it. So if you sign it, ask for a copy. And then, once you continue on in active duty, just keep keep printing out things. So there's a system that keeps all of our OPRs, all of our, contracts and things like that. But I still keep an actual hard copy of every single thing, because I don't know if the system's gonna crash or if it's just gonna disappear or what. So Captain Mo's shaking his head like it's true. Keep a copy of everything. And then some more questions. What does reporting look like at your new unit? It depends. Some people have sponsors, some people don't. Some people just show up. But always try to make contact with at least someone in your unit so they can expect you to come. They already know that you're coming, but it's easier when you know actually where you're going on the base. So that way you're not wandering around looking lost. But everyone already knows you're coming. You're going to be a brand new lieutenant, brand new OCPs, crisp second lieutenant rank on them. So everyone knows that you're brand new. So don't worry about, looking crazy. Everyone's going to expect that you don't know where you're going. So the easiest thing is to just know what building you're going to. And then from then on, you can just be as lost as you want to be. People are definitely going to help you for a new lieutenant. They're going to help you. We're not going to just let you, wander and run into walls and things like that. People are definitely out there to help you. But then do we have any more questions? I think I saw one pop up in the chat box. Oh, someone said the more information you can add to your OPR for your boss or supervisor, the better. Yes. So as you move on in the rank, you're going to basically write your own OPR. So as a second lieutenant, your supervisor may write it for you, may ask, hey, do you want to watch me write it? Just, that way you can get practice. But as a captain, as a first lieutenant, you should be able to write those bullets yourself and then just give it to them, and they shouldn't be able to need to fix anything at all.
So a question in the chat, how do you get an enlisted CAC updated to officer? How soon after commissioning can you do that?
So once you commission and you get your orders and you get all your paperwork, you basically can just walk into an MPF and they'll ask, hey, do you have your DD Form 4? Do you have your commissioning paperwork? And you'll say yes, and you give that to them. And it's a system. So the DEER system, they log in and they literally type your name in, type your social in, and they click from the drop down, it'll click lieutenant, and that's it. It's super easy. I see new lieutenants have EAD that said they're unable to get their CAC due to not being in DEERs. What do we tell them? So it depends on if they have, if it's their active duty date. So if they commissioned, then they won't be able to get their CAC yet. So some people, for example, myself, I commissioned in 14, but I didn't go active until 15, but I couldn't get a CAC until I actually got to my base because I wasn't considered active duty until I got to my base. So you actually have to in process, and then you can get into DEERs, and then you can have your CAC. How soon after your EAD should you get in touch with your unit? So you should be in contact with, so EAD is when you actually enter active duty. So after you get there, basically. So you should be in contact with someone in your unit before you even EAD. So if, let's say you get orders in May and your EAD is in October, you should definitely make contact with someone. That way they can know that you're coming. So as soon as possible, the sooner the better, because you're probably gonna have tons of questions about the area and everything. What if our CAC expires before we get to our base? You can get a new one. So if you already have a CAC for some reason, you can definitely get a new one. Just go to your closest base. Once you commission, give them that paperwork and they'll create you a brand new one. So CACs expired in 3 years. So they were 4 years, but now it's 3 years. So just go ahead and get a new one. Any more CAC questions? The CAC is the key to your occupation. Do not lose your CAC. As an MPF and personnelist, getting someone to get a new CAC is crazy because we actually have to require you all to get something signed by your commander or your first sergeant, just saying, hey, you lost your CAC, because it's a security violation. Yes, don't forget your PIN. Don't forget your PIN. So CACs do not get, so spouses do not get CACs. They get what's called a dependent ID. So once you get them uploaded into DEERs and you have your marriage certificate, you can take them into the MPF. And basically they take a picture and get a nice new orange ID and they will have base access privileges. have like 1 more minute. Do you have any more questions about like MPF things or personnel things? The most important thing I would say is to just make sure you in process first and then go to finance. Will we be given the contact information from others in the same unit? Can you elaborate on that?
You'll generally have a recall roster.
Oh, he means, okay, yes.
I think that's what he's trying to get at.
Yes, so once you get into your unit, they'll collect all your information, address, birthday, if you have kids, and if you have a dog, all this kind of stuff, in case of emergency. So if something happens, like you said, you'll have a recall roster. So you'll have that information, but it's not at your disposal to just say, hey, can we link up? Let's go have a beer, things like that. It's just for, you know, professional purposes only, standard purposes only, but you'll definitely have the information for people in your unit. So if you are PCSing and you do not have information, so if you're EADing this summer and you don't have any contact information for people in your unit, Facebook is a great resource to find someone. So you can go on, like if you're a 38F, go on a 38F page, but there are other AFSC pages out there and just say, hey, I'm going to this base. Can someone help me out? And my time is up, but I still have a couple more questions. Does the Air Force have any type of sponsor system that'll help? Yes, so there is a sponsor system. So when a base or a unit knows that you're getting there, they'll have a document called a RIP, and it basically says who you are, where you're coming from, where you're gonna work. And there's a section on there for sponsors. So they can allocate someone in that unit to be assigned to you to help you figure out, hey, this is how you get around base. Where do you wanna live? Do you have kids? They pretty much help you out. It's your wingman. But some bases don't assign sponsors because the sponsorship system is going away. But you can request a sponsor just to help you out. And usually most of the time it'll be a fellow CGO or a senior NCO or whoever spot you're taking over for. So it's kind of informal, it's kind of formal, but there is definitely someone assigned to help you get around base. And Google is definitely a good resource as well. Websites, print out a map before you get there. That way you know where you're going again. But the MPF and everything is very complex. So I would say learn it. Even if you're not a personnelist, definitely learn it. Because like I said, no one is gonna update your information or cares about your information except for you. All right, that's my time.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Captain Mo.
I appreciate it. That was really awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're welcome. Give her a virtual clap. All right. Thank you so much. Hey, is there a Staff Sergeant Pridgeon on here?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Okay, awesome.
I'm listening on the TMO.
Cool. All right, guys. So TMO these are the movers. So you definitely want to know how to move all your stuff. So over to you.
All right. So I'm Staff Sergeant Pridgeon. I'm stationed over at Tyndall Air Force Base here in Florida. Unfortunately, our slides are not sending over due to some security issue, but I do remember word for word how I put the slides together. So the first thing I want to go over are the different types of moves that you can do being an active duty member, reservist, or guard even. And it all depends on where you're going, how you plan to move, and how long you're going to be at that location. So there's 4 different types of moves that the military mainly uses, which is going to be unaccompanied baggage, non-temporary storage, a storage in transit, or a PPM. I'm gonna give you a brief breakdown of each one. That way you know what you want to do once you get to where you got to go. So your non-temporary storage move is considered your long-term storage. And that's usually when you're going over to a place like Germany, or you're going over to a place like Germany or the UK, and you have a bunch of, oh, my slides. Hey, perfect. Thank you so much, Captain Mo. So we'll go over first, household goods move entitlements. So upon graduation, you'll be in OON. You'll be entitled to move up to 10,000 pounds if you do not have dependents, and 12,000 pounds if you do have dependents. Very straightforward. We're gonna break down how you wanna move that though. There are 4 different types of moves you can do through the government depending on your situation. There's storage in transit, which is also referred to as household goods. Non-temporary storage, which is what we were just gonna go over, but that's gonna be considered your long-term storage. unaccompanied baggage, which is also known as expedited shipping, and your personally procured move, which is when you take your U-Haul or your truck and you move your property yourself and the government actually pays you out for it. As you progress in rank and your life changes, your entitlement increases as well. All right, next slide for me, please. All right, so the first one we want to go over is storage and transit, and this is the most common one. Storage and transit is used when you're going from state to state or even CONUS to OCONUS, or the continental US over to the outside of continental US. So storage and transit means that your property is going to move from, let's say you're moving from Florida to Oklahoma. The movers are actually going to come out to your house, pack your property up, and then start driving it over to Oklahoma. Once that shipment gets there and you can't accept delivery of your shipment, the government is actually going to give you 90 days to get your storage out. If you can't get your property out within 90 days, you will be able to extend it for an additional 90 days so that you have more time to find a home or get yourself together if you need that time. You want to make sure that you take advantage of your storage and transit move, but you also want to make sure you take advantage of your non-temporary storage and unaccompanied baggage move, because you're going to be hands off on that one. Next slide for me. All right, so non-temporary storage. Non-temporary storage is also referred to as permanent storage. It is when your property is picked up from your residence and it is placed into a government contracted storage unit for the duration of your tour. So what I mean by that is, instead of your property moving from point A to point B, it's actually going to stay at point A. So we're going to hire a company. Company's going to come out, pick your property up, put it in the storage in that same location that you just left from, and you'll have no worries for the duration of your tour. Non-temporary storage is authorized to members who are going overseas, TDY status for more than 20 weeks, or for separation of retirees. NTS for separation is authorized for 180 days after the separation date, and NTS for retirement is authorized for up to a year after the retirement date. So you want to make sure that you use your non-temporary storage if you're going over to the UK or Germany. I don't know if you've all ever been, but the plugs over there aren't the same, right? So if you take your washer and dryer over to Germany or the UK and you try to plug your washer and dryer up to the wall, you're going to realize that you just took some unnecessary weight over to Germany, and you're gonna have your feelings hurt because those rooms are really small, it's really tight. It's just gonna suck. So make sure that you take advantage of your non-temporary storage, and you want to make sure that you ask around before you get to your base on what you should and should not take. Next slide for me. So unaccompanied baggage. Unaccompanied baggage is extremely useful for people who have kids or people who just got short notice orders and they need their property to get there before everything else. So let's say you get some orders to go over to the UK, and I like to use the UK and Germany a lot because they're very easy. It's very common. Unaccompanied baggage is used when you're going overseas and have certain items that you will need to survive, or your household goods is in transit. And that's flat out what it is. So let's say you have kids, you're going over to Germany, and your kids need their books, they need their bed, you need your pots and pans. Those are the things you're going to ship over for unaccompanied baggage. Unaccompanied baggage does not have a specific weight entitlement because it's all based on how many dependents you have, the age of the dependents, and where you're going to. So you're not going to get the same unaccompanied baggage entitlement for a place like Korea opposed to Germany. So I just briefed a member who had 2 kids and a wife, but before we input his shipment with his kids and his wife, he was only entitled to 500 pounds of unaccompanied baggage. After we put his kids in there, he was entitled to 2,700 pounds of unaccompanied baggage. And that's all based on how old they were and where they were going. So you want to make sure that you check up on unaccompanied baggage if you have pots and pans or things that you need to send over there immediately and have ready for you when you get there. Next slide. So your personally procured move, everyone's favorite thing to do when they just don't trust the government to move their property, or they want to make some extra money and they feel like it's super easy to do. So your personally procured move is also known as a DITY, or a do-it-yourself move. It's when the member moves their property by themselves and pays out of pocket for any costs associated with the transportation of their move. So let's say you have 8,000 pounds worth of household goods that you feel like is easy. You're gonna hire some friends, pizza and beer, and you guys are gonna move your property from point A to point B, get paid out for it. And the government says, okay, if you move this 8,000 pound shipment, the GCC amount is gonna be $10,000. That means the government is allotting $10,000 for this 8,000 pound move. You get everything packed up and you head over to California, where your next duty station is going to be. The government is going to say, okay, you did move 8,000 pounds. We're going to give you 10,000. We're going to give you that $10,000, but it's going to be taxed at 20 to 25%. The way that you can avert being taxed so heavily is by making sure that you're going to get in a U-Haul, or you're buying boxes and tapes and chains and things that you need to pack your material and make sure that it's preserved. You want to make sure that your property gets there safe, just like we want to make sure your property gets there safe. Now, if personally procured moves become too much, or you feel like it's too much, you have those other 3 options to move your property, everything besides unaccompanied baggage and non-temporary storage, of course. Your household goods move is going to be your go-to if you don't want to do a personally procured move. You'll be paid for your move based on the weight as well as the rate from origin to destination. So the rates vary based on where you're at and where you're going to. So let's say you're at Tyndall and you're going over to McDill. The rate may be $1.10. But if you're going from Tyndall over to California, the rate may be $3 per pound. So it's all dependent on how much weight you're moving and where you're moving to. We already went over the certain items that are paid for, considered tax deductible, and we'll be reimbursed to you during tax season, January through April of the following year. So you will get a W-2 in the mail just to show, hey, you spent X amount of dollars. We're going to give you this money back. Next for me. So common mistakes of new military movers, and this doesn't just go for lieutenants. This is everybody. It's extremely common across the board. So most newcomers in the military neglect their entitlements to compensation through government moves and utilize the claims process if property was damaged, lost, or broken. So let's say you did do a household goods move and you have some items that were broken. You have a TV stand, and some other furniture that was broken. You don't want to just say, I'm gonna just take this hit. It is what it is. The move was free. You want to make sure that you go on a DPS or move.mil and get those items claimed, because why should you have to pay for them all over again? Make sure that you file those claims and you call your personal property office and you say, hey, how do I go about getting compensated for these items that are lost, stolen, broken, damaged? And we'll walk you through that process. Another very common one is forgetting to get vehicles weighed. So you want to make sure that you get your vehicles weighed both full and empty when you're doing a PPM. If you don't get your vehicles weighed both full and empty, and you don't have a valid excuse as to why you didn't get your property weighed, then there's going to be nothing we can do for you. You might just end up having to repack that truck up and go weigh it. That's just a waste of time, and it's a waste of money a lot of the times. Losing receipts. So you want to make sure that you keep track of all your receipts during your PPM process, kind of like what the MPF briefing just told you. Make sure that you keep a folder of everything that has to do with your TMO move, as well as anything that has to do with MPF. You need to make sure that you have your orders, your DD 1351-2, your DD form 2278, and your PPM checklist before you come and turn in your PPM. You can get it done at your new base, but it's more of a hassle for you if you didn't get the briefing ahead of time. Most of all, use your TMO at your will. Don't be afraid to call us. Don't be afraid to ask about your entitlement. Don't say, oh, I think this is a stupid question, so I'm not going to ask it. We don't expect you guys to know all the answers. We don't expect to have all the answers at hand. But one thing that we will guarantee is that we'll find it for you and get it to you in a timely manner. Our job at TMO is to make sure that your moves worldwide go as smoothly as possible. And if we can have any impact on that, then I believe that we fulfilled our mission and we've made the move process a whole lot easier and a whole lot better for you all. My recommendations for anyone who's interested in moving their property through the government is make sure that you keep track of everything. Make sure that you have pictures and videos, receipts, appraisals on the items. Make sure that you keep track of all your firearms serial numbers, any vehicles you want moved, any boats. You want to make sure that you keep all of that information on hand so that when it's asked of you, you're able to present it without, saying, oh, I have to go back home and get that information. I have to go and do X and O before I can get you that information, or I have to dig it from my storage unit. You want to make sure that you just have it at hand so your move goes as smoothly as possible. And we're not prolonging your process, because once those days start getting close, you'll notice that you should have taken pictures. So I see a message here from Captain McBride, and she can tell you, make sure that you take pictures of all high value items prior to them being packed. It would suck if you didn't take a picture, it gets broken in transit, and then you call the TSP and say, hey, my item was broken, what's going on? And they say, we didn't do it, or it was like that when you gave it to us. Make sure that you get all of that done. So I'm going to answer some of the questions that have been passed so far, and then if you guys have any more questions, I'll be more than happy to assist. Could these TMO slides be sent out for future reference? For sure. I'll make sure that I send them, or Captain Mo has them. So I'm pretty sure he'll disperse them out to whoever needs them. What type of move would you recommend for our first PCS? For your first PCS, I recommend that you get a household goods move done first, just so that you know how the government move works. If you're going to do a PPM, yes, you'll get paid out. It'll be a decent payout, but you may not do everything that you need to do, and it may cause you more headache and heartache than anything. So my recommendation is always start with the household goods move, and then once you get to your second base, try a PPM out. Try everything out at least once before you commit to one thing for the rest of your career, if it comes to that. Captain McBride said TMO decides what method to use depending on your orders. Very true. We do make the recommendation, but ultimately the decision is yours. So if you say, I don't want to ship my property over to Korea, or I don't want to put my property in storage while I'm in Korea, I want to ship it over. My recommendation would be, hey man, use your 12 months as free storage. But if you choose to ship it, then it's on you, and any excess cost that may come will ultimately be on you. So you have to be responsible when you're making those decisions, but we will guide you through it. So can you do a partial PPM, take one small U-Haul with your essentials and have TMO move the rest? Yes, you can. So with the partial PPM, again, just make sure that you get those vehicles weighed, both full and empty, and you have all of your receipts on hand so that everything it's there. You don't have to worry about something getting kicked back. But make sure that you also go into the TMO office, or you log on to move.mil to get that TMO move ready. I suggest that you call your TMO office and you get a QA inspector out there for your first move, just to make sure that everything is going well. How soon should we contact TMO after receiving an EAD? You want to contact your TMO office as soon as you get your orders in hand. As soon as you have your hard copy orders in hand, contact TMO and ask all the questions that you need to. We love to be on the phone with you guys. It makes us better. We make you better. How does moving work for pilot selects that will go for an extended period of time? Go training for an extended period of time. It all depends on how you move your property on the front end. So if you elect to put your property into, or ship your property to where you're at, Oklahoma, where most pilots go. But if you would like to ship your property over to Oklahoma and you can't receive your property because you're in school, and you're in school for longer than 20 weeks, that shipment will be converted from a household goods shipment or storage in transit shipment over to a non-temporary storage shipment, where it'll stay in non-temporary storage for the duration of your schooling. Now, once it's time for you to go, because I know pilots hop around during their training, once it's time for you to go to a new base, that property will get shipped from Oklahoma over to your next base, Goodfellow or Vance, wherever you end up going. We'll make sure that we get that to you. For dual military, do both parties need to submit paperwork? Yes and no. So this is a tough one. If you're dual military and you know you're going to be over your weight entitlement by yourself, then make sure that your spouse also submits their paperwork, because they're going to get 10,000 pounds. You're going to get 10,000 pounds, which equals 20,000 pounds. If you know that your property together weighs 14,000 pounds, you say, okay, I'm gonna file for 9,000. You're gonna file for 5,000. That way we still have our weight entitlement if we need it. Just in case you guys do come overweight, you guys still have a little bit of wiggle room. Okay. How soon can we move before our EAD date? As soon as you get your orders, you can start getting ready to move. But you want to make sure that you line it up with your RNLTD and when you actually plan on going. So if your EAD starts on the 1st of May, and you know that you need to be at your base by the 25th of April, you want to go to your TMO office now and try to get that shipment booked for sometime next week so that it could be there by the time that you get to your next base, depending on where you're going. A lot of the time shipments take a little while to go. I have one more question if it's on the floor.
Hey, Staff Sergeant Pridgeon, I think we might have to move on if you don't mind. Is that okay? Hey,
Yes, sir.
That was so helpful. I learned some stuff. That was awesome. Very well done, man. We appreciate you. Everybody give him a big round of applause. That was amazing. Thank you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. No problem. You guys have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Last brief, and then we'll do the roundtable at the end. So over to Staff Sergeant Lee from Finance.
Let me just turn it around. I'm sorry. Or actually, I'm just going to share my PowerPoints right now.
Sergeant Lee, are you there?
I'm still here. I'm sorry. I just having a little issue. But, okay. Can you all see the slides?
Yep, I got them.
All right, so I'm Staff Sergeant Lee from Tyndall's Finance Office, actually Active Duty Finance Office. And I say active duty because active duty is different from Guard and Reserve Finance Office. So those will be a separate office. So like Staff Sergeant Pridgeon said, with TMO ties into active duty finance, because once you gather household goods, get it moving, and you're ready to travel to your new duty location, your next stop would be your finance office. So once you arrived at your new duty location, in order to get reimbursed for your PCS, make sure that you in process with the finance office within 5 duty days and file what's called a PCS travel voucher. Now, this is separate from TMO. TMO will have their own documentations after your move and everything. But your PCS travel voucher, once you file that, it's used for 2 purposes. 1, it's to file for your travel reimbursements, and 2, to start your military pay entitlements correctly. So when you file it, make sure you have your required documents, which would include your PCS orders with all and any amendments, any receipts that you have, like Captain McBride and Staff Sergeant Bridgen have stated previously, make sure you keep all your receipts, including when you travel as well. And if you're claiming any dependents at all, whether you're married to a civilian or.
Staff Sergeant Lee. So,
Yes, sir.
I apologize for interrupting you. I can't see, I think maybe other people can't either. If the slides are changing, we can't see them change. We still see the title slide on, or at least I do. I only see the title slide.
Same on my end.
Now they're changing. So you're on slide 2. You're on slide number 2 right now.
Yes, okay. Thank you. All right, so like I said, the required documents that you'll need for the finance would be your PCS orders with any and all amendments, receipts. Make sure you keep all your receipts while you are traveling en route to your new duty location. And if you're claiming dependents, make sure you have a copy of your marriage certificate. If you are claiming children in custody, child's birth certificate, and if you're paying child support, court order documents. So those will be needed because depending on your entitlements, they will increase as well. All right, so one of the very helpful website that's used DoD-wide and updated yearly and weekly or monthly whenever they update any entitlements is the DTMO website. Under the travel regulations allowances, you can find rates on housing, COLA, per diem, and the joint travel regulations is a very, very useful and helpful tool to use. It's just regulations on pretty much whenever you're on official orders to travel. So make sure that you double check the joint travel regulations if you are unsure about anything that's reimbursable when you travel. And most likely if it's not listed in the joint travel regulation, it is not authorized. So just keep that in mind so you don't pay too much while you travel for anything. And then as far as getting in advance, once you receive your official orders, you may contact the nearest active duty finance office and ask for. Yes, sir.
Sorry, can you, I still can't see the slides. Can you maybe close out of the slides and then try to re-share it? Maybe it just didn't load. Maybe it's frozen a little bit. Try to share it again.
So a potential fix is when you go to screen share, say share desktop and not share PowerPoint. Sometimes that helps.
Okay, let me try that. I'm so sorry, I don't use Zoom very often at all.
Where's the share desktop button, Chloe?
So right now I'm only able to see everybody who's logged on because as prior to when I shared it, those buttons disappeared from me.
And so I'm going to force stop your sharing if you want to restart it.
All right, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And then this time choose, if it gives you the option, choose desktop and not PowerPoint. Okay, now try, yeah. Maybe just advance, so don't try to do slideshow through PowerPoint and just advance through.
Okay, are you able to see, I'm on slide 4?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. All right, so as far as advances go, once you receive your PCS orders, you can contact the nearest active duty finance. And as of right now, being brand new lieutenants, there are 2 options that you can ask for an advance. The first one would be for a pay advance. So 30 days prior to departing, you may ask for an advance. And this advance would only include your base pay, 1 month's base pay minus deductions, not to exceed 3 months. And you can also actually request for an advance after arriving as well, not to exceed 180 days at the new duty location. The second advance that you may ask for is a travel advance. For this advance, we would like for you to know your mode of travel, as far as whether you're using your private auto or you're flying to your next duty location. That way we can calculate all your entitlements correctly and we don't overpay you for any of your travel advances. And once you file your PCS travel voucher, this advance will be deducted from that. With it, you will need a signed direct deposit form because everything will be deposited by EFT. All right, and then one of the other questions that was asked for is getting paid for dislocation allowance, also known as DLA. So dislocation allowance, you will be paid for DLA once you file your PCS travel voucher. The only thing with this is when you are brand new to the military and entering or traveling to your first duty location, those of you who are single with no dependents, unfortunately, you will not be authorized dislocation allowance until you go to your second duty location. For those of you who have dependents, you will be authorized the with dependent rate because there's two rates, the with dependent rate and without dependent rate, and all different for each pay grade. So the only thing with being paid for DLA, for those of you who have dependents, you have to make sure that your dependents travel and arrive at the new duty location in order for this to be paid out. So they don't have to travel with you at the same time. It's just that once you receive your orders, they will just have to, if they travel at a later time, you will then be paid for your DLA. You'll just have to file another voucher for them. One of the most important things about this too is that make sure that your dependents are listed on your orders. So if they're not on your orders, make sure that you contact the personnel office to get that amended and have your dependents added to that. So that way they can be reimbursed for their travel and you'll be paid for DLA. All right, so I already stated that your second duty location, if you're single, you'll then be authorized the single rate dislocation allowance. This is just an example of the 2021 rates right now. And then, all right, so getting paid for temporary lodging expense or temporary lodging allowance, there's two different types. Temporary lodging expense, TLE, is paid in the CONUS, so stateside, and TLA is paid OCONUS, so overseas lodging allowance. This is just really to reimburse you for lodging in the at your old duty location and at the new duty location. So one of the good things about this is that if you're not attached to or physically at a Air Force installation, you may reside off base. The only thing with it is I had pulled up the DTMO website before that shows you the housing allowance and all of those entitlements. You can always check on that website to make sure that the area that you are staying in for lodging prior to leaving or after arriving at the new duty location, that you double check the rates so you don't overpay for anything. And what I mean by that is that on-base lodging is always 100% reimbursable, but off-base lodging won't be 100% reimbursable depending on whether you have dependents or not. So for a CONUS to CONUS move, you have 10 days prior to departing to utilize lodging for it to be reimbursable. And you also have another 10 days after arriving to your new duty location to stay in base lodging or off base, whichever one you're authorized. If you're going from CONUS to an OCONUS location, you're only authorized 5 days in the CONUS. And then once you arrive OCONUS, you'll be paid what's called TLA, the allowance. This would just be paid in a one lump sum lodging reimbursement with your first and 15th pay period. Right. So like I said, single and members with dependents differ. So if you're authorized to stay off base for lodging prior to departing or after you arrive, because your household goods are still in storage or they're being shipped or on the way to your new duty location. For single members, if you're staying off base, you're only authorized 65% of the locality rate. So for instance, if you arrive here at Tyndall and Tyndall's housing on base lodging is not available, and they said you can stay your 10 days off base, and off base in Bay County is $120. If you're single, you'll only be authorized 65% of the $120. If you have your dependents and your dependents travel with you at the same time, you will be authorized a 100% rate. So that's the only difference between being single and having with dependents who are traveling with you. These are just going over your eligibility. As long as you don't stay in government quarters, you can utilize DLE. So getting paid for COLA. So COLA is pretty much just a cost of living allowance. I've noticed within the last year that other stateside locations are authorized COLA now, only because the cost of living allowance has been going up and our pay has not been matched, or we don't get paid as much as the cost of living allowance in those areas. So in order to be authorized COLA, make sure that you buy your travel voucher. So having your travel voucher done and done correctly is very important in order for all your entitlements to be paid. Again, the DTMO website will list all of the COLA rates, CONUS and CONUS. So if you want to double check on that before you leave, just so you know your finances, you can always double check on that. Just some basic pay information as a second lieutenant. The DFAST website, this is all the pay charts that for the pay that you're entitled to. So our basic pay that everybody is entitled to is base pay, BAS, which is for food, and BAH, which is CONUS and OHA, overseas housing allowance. It's obviously for overseas. And any special and incentive bonus pays, bonuses will be handled by AFBC. Flight pay, if you are entitled to that, will be handled by the local base harm office. And for any language proficiency pay, will be handled by the education office. All right, and then these are just some helpful resources. I'll email the slides to Captain Mo, so you guys can have the websites to double check on any questions that you have. MyPay would most likely be the only website that you will not be able to access since you are not at your new duty location just yet. So once you arrive and are at your new duty location, I'm sure your MyPay account will be activated in order for you to view your statements, update your address, direct deposits, and start your TSP, which is your retirement savings plan. So I don't have much information on TSP and the BRS, but the Airmen and Family Readiness Center, they have tax consultant and certified personnel and experts on retirement, financial, and tax information. If any of you have questions on those, every installation has an Airmen and Family Readiness Center who assists all airmen and their families in any situations, whether you're PCSing or any finances, activities that goes on in base. They're a very, very helpful unit. And I'm sorry, I didn't want to take up too much time, so.
Did any questions come through the chat, Chloe? I couldn't see.
Yes, the only one I have is, are the reimbursements for moving taken out of the DLA rate, or is DLA a separate amount? Also, is the DLA amount taxable?
So for military members, your travel reimbursements are not taxable. So this is just travel specifically. As far as your household goods, those are taxable. So that's a separate payment. It's separate voucher that you'll file with TMO. But as far as filing your PCS travel voucher, your move and your reimbursements are not taken out from your DLA. DLA is just a one-time authorized payment for an official PCS. And it's really just to offset for the cost of moving. And you're entitled to it. It's not taxable as well.
One just came in. How long does it usually take for a new lieutenant at Tyndall to begin receiving pay? So maybe just in general as well.
All right, so just in general, as far as a new lieutenant, it can get complicated as far as being a new lieutenant and getting your first paycheck, because everything is for you is still being built as far as your active duty military pay record, your profile, and everything. So it may take a while. I would recommend starting to look at your finances and see where you are at, so that once you arrive at the new duty location, you don't have to worry about it. Your pay, I will say, begins on the day that you enter active duty. However, it may take a while for the finance office to actually be able to see your pay record. That's the only thing with it. So pay starts the day that you enter active duty. BAH will start, and all those other entitlements will start when you arrive at the new duty location.
Thank you. That's all the questions in the chat.
Okay,
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sergeant Lee. We appreciate it.
you're welcome.
Let's give her a big virtual round of applause. Thank you so much. And have a great day. Let's see if I can stop participant sharing. There we go. All right, guys. So that concludes all the briefers we had scheduled. So at the end here, for as long as you guys want to hang around, myself and Captain Swanson and Captain Babcock, we're going to hang around and answer any questions you guys have that maybe weren't asked, or maybe things you're just wondering from people that used to be lieutenants and maybe have some lessons to share. One thing I'll say about DLA, since we just got off the topic, is think of DLA as when you move, you're going to throw away that half full bottle of ketchup. You're going to throw out probably your bleach. You're going to throw out all that stuff that you're not able to move, and you're going to have to rebuy all those things. So that's one of the things that DLA kind of offsets, is all that random stuff you're going to have to buy, new blinds, new curtains, because the curtain rods in your old house aren't going to fit in your new house, all that random stuff. So but anyway, what questions do you guys have?
Yeah, so one question I have would just be, I know the chat says about 2 months of pay saved. What is the amount that you kind of saved when you first commissioned for, moving and buying couches and TVs and kitchen supplies, and also waiting for pay to come in? What was that amount you kind of saved?
Captain Mo, you want to take that, or do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I can't. My experience was a little bit different because I went to officer training school. So I went to officer training school when I was a little bit older, and I had some money saved up from previous jobs. So my experience is a little bit different than a brand new lieutenant with no job experience. So I'm probably a bad person to answer the question.
Yeah. So I can try to tackle it. So I had to wait 360 days before I entered active duty because there was a huge stop on how many active duty members can enter. And so I worked the entire time. So I had a couple $1,000s saved up in the instance of, hey, if my finance office messes up my pay somehow, I'm covered for at least a couple months. So I stayed in the hotel, so TMO, which is the lodging on base, and lived there for probably 2 months because I knew I was going to tech school, which is 8 weeks for a force support officer. And then when I returned is when I got my apartment. So it gave me more of a wiggle room to save up once finance started to kick in, and you get back paid for all of that. So you get a very large chunk of money at one time. When TMO hits, when you start filing your finances, you're going to get a large amount. So just make sure you have, if you can, a couple $1,000s saved. Hopefully that helps.
Going into the first 30 days of entering active duty, seems like there's a lot of checklists and things to accomplish and in process. What are some things that you wish you knew at the start that maybe we can prepare ourselves as we start to enter active duty towards the end of the year?
So if you receive the second lieutenant guide that was sent out to all of Air Force ROTC, I would start with that. That would definitely be very helpful to make you more prepared than we ever could have been prepared for entering active duty. Knowing what your roles and responsibilities are going to be. So reading Air Force, the Air Force Instruction 1-1, and then your commander's responsibilities, which is Air Force Instruction 1-2. Those are going to set the foundation of, hey, these are what's expected of me as an officer in this organization. And then be prepared for long days when you first start, because you're going to do a lot of CBTs, which your computer-based training. So just be prepared. They're not going to immediately throw you into the job and expect you to lead right that very second, because they know, hey, you within the 30, 60 days period, you have to accomplish all of these items that are on the checklist. And if you show up to your organization and your computer systems are down, you're not going to accomplish anything for a long time. So just be cautious of that.
I guess my advice would be, yeah, you're going to have all these things you're going to have to do. You're going to have a checklist. You're going to have to go to MPF and to finance. You have these checklists of things you have to do. My advice would be, yes, do those things, but also start building relationships. Start talking to people, kind of like the NCOs and the senior NCOs alluded to. Get to know your people, ask questions, let them know truly that you care and that you want to learn the job. You're not the expert and you want them to teach you. And you'll be surprised at how accepting they are of that, and how much credibility you'll have as a result of that. If you humble yourself to ask those questions, they'll love you for it, because they're proud of it. They love what they do, and they'll be smiling ear to ear to tell you about how important their job is and how much they love it. So don't forget to start building relationships. And I see Sergeant Bailey. Thanks for jumping on, Sheriff.
Hey, Captain Mo, can I jump in here? Can I add something to what you said?
Absolutely.
Hey, I appreciate it. I was on another Zoom call. Sorry. Master Sergeant Hunt covered down for me. But couple things. So you're going to have, it's going to be, did we talk about drinking out of a fire hose? You pushed at you at one. I'm telling you, it's going to be a whirlwind. So you need to prioritize and be really good at prioritizing, but find that person. You should have a sponsor. If you don't have a sponsor, find that person you can trust in the unit. It'll take you under the wing and say, hey, can you help me focus on what needs to be accomplished right now? What are my alligators in the boat? And so you take care of the alligators in the boat first, then you take care of the ones that are maybe outside the boat, okay, a little further away. So from day one, you're going to have to get there, prioritize on what's important, what's going to get you, what you need to do to get paid, get all that stuff taken care of. Ingrain yourself, learn the commander's intent, learn your mission, ask why. You ask 5 whys to get down to the root cause of everything. So be interested in your mission, be interested in your people, build relationships, get that person that's going to take you under their wing, and you'll be very successful doing that. And it'll take a lot of stress off you if you're organized and you have a priority list, and we'll get you there. So yeah, have a little bit of money saved up if you can, and the Air Force will take care of you. That's all I have. Over.
Thanks, Sheriff. Any questions from the chat? Captain Babcock, I can't see the chat. I don't know why.
Yeah, it looks like Captain McBride is kind of running points. Some other people are holding questions. Let's see. If we do TMO move, are we responsible for packing up and boxing items, or do the movers do that? So we, I've never done TMO. I've DIDI moved or PPM moved every single time, so I can speak to that.
They pack for you. They'll actually pack and unpack for you. I would recommend you do not allow them to unpack for you. The reason I say that is because they will literally unpack everything and they will just put it all over your house in no good order, and you won't be able to move because they would just put everything on the floor and they'll leave. So I would never recommend having them unpack your stuff at your new location, but they generally do pack all of your materials, all of your household goods, and then they usually do that on a certain, so depending on how much you have, they'll pack it for maybe a day or two, depending on how much you have, and they'll send in folks behind it to actually lift it and put it in a truck.
Also, to piggyback off of that, if you don't want them to unpack your items, depending on the moving company, you can ask them to come back in a couple of days to take all of your trash, so you're not trying to figure out how to get rid of the million pieces of paper that they put into your boxes. Additionally, if you're going to have them pack your stuff, make sure you don't have trash cans lying around or toilet plungers or anything that's going to be gross, because they will pack that. So just be cognizant of that.
Next question, what is your suggestion on finding housing before you EAD to a location?
So your sponsor should help you out with that. Typically, when you're going to your new duty location, there will be someone in your squadron. Hopefully, it's a lieutenant just like you, maybe a first lieutenant. They've been there for a while, and they should serve as your sponsor. And what a sponsor does is they do things like this. They answer all of your questions ahead of time about your new base, the unit, the surrounding area, the schools. If you have kids, they're pretty much your linchpin to ask them whatever you want. And in my experience, they're typically the first person you see when you get to your new base. You meet your sponsor, they shake your hand, they give you a high five, and they say welcome. So if you guys do not have a sponsor or your unit does not reach out to you, reach out to them and ask for one, because these are the types of things they can help with. You say, hey, where do I live? Say, oh, don't live over here, but you should live over here, and they'll help you through that kind of stuff. What else do we got?
So the Anthony Lee, Captain Swanson kind of answered that question already. It's hard to tell which ones are answered and not answered. Let's see. Staff Sergeant Lee said we will collect BAH right away. Correct? Yeah, that's correct. So as soon as you start getting paid, that's all going to be together with your base pay. How does TMO packing your items work if you live with a roommate? Can you be there to supervise what they pack?
So it's kind of mandatory. You have to be there when they are packing up your items, or you have a designated individual there in writing that says, hey, we're going to be here to supervise you packing up our items. So someone has to be there for them to be able to pack up their stuff. Do not leave them alone with your items.
Captain Swanson, can I tag in? So when I first EAD'd, and believe it or not, they tried to pack some of her stuff. Like, we lived in an apartment. So just make sure they don't pack your roommate's stuff. So what I did was I put all my stuff on one side of the apartment. That way I let them know, like, hey, only pack this side and on, so they wouldn't pack anything else. But I would suggest doing that. Or even you can do sticky notes and just label, put your name on there or something like that.
I have a couple different recommendations for moving regarding this topic. So the first, always watch the movers. I've had things stolen before. Things don't make it to my next duty station. So it does happen. So just make sure they're being watched. Not that you don't want to trust people, but things have been stolen before. The other thing that I'd recommend is, well, along that line, you're going to get a sheet that you're going to sign with all of the boxes and all the things they're taking out of your house, and it'll be a huge inventory sheet. And when you get to your new base, they're essentially going to take it off the truck, and you're going to go through and check mark that everything that was there at your old base is there at your new base. So that will be there. One thing I'd recommend, just has usually helped me and my family, is when the movers get there, take all of the stuff that you don't want them to pack and put it somewhere where they can't get to it. So we would take everything out of a bedroom, and then we put everything we don't want them to pack in a bedroom and seal it off with tape, like it's a hazmat zone or something. So that way they can't go in there and pack it. So, all the stuff you're going to need for your trip. So, I have kids, so, diapers, pack and play, clothes, your uniforms, don't let them pack your uniforms, all that kind of stuff. Put all that stuff somewhere where they can't get to it, because they will pack it. They'll pack everything in sight, even your trash, if you leave trash in your trash can. So those are my couple recommendations on those things.
Yeah, good point. Captain McBride put in there that it's not military members packing your stuff. It's a contracted out. They contract out to a company. Other questions?
I would like to add something. So as a first sergeant, I see lots and lots and lots of finance issues, especially upon PCSing. So it's your personal responsibility to make sure your paycheck is correct. So I have all the time people are getting overpaid. Then they have a great big debt, and then they ask for debt forgiveness. And no, they should have been looking at their paycheck. You should know what you should be paid. You get paid. It's no secret. You know your BAH rate is. So make sure you're taking a look at that. A really good expectation of when your paycheck should be leveled out and everything should be good. And your normal paycheck is probably 2 to 3 month mark. It's a little different when you know, if you never get a paycheck before. Hopefully you're getting paychecks but at the 2 month mark. But don't hesitate. So there's a new finance system, which is awesome. I've had a lot of experience with it already. Everything is web-based. You put all your tickets in, you put your passcode in there, and that goes right to the right base in the right finance office. No more do you have to go there in person. So it tracks your issues. And I mean, I've got tickets closed out and I'm like, nope, I don't like that answer. Not good enough. You know what I mean? That's not, I need this open. So, and it works. So processors are getting better for you, but I just want to let you guys know it's a personal responsibility to make sure your paycheck is correct. Because when you get a big debt, sometimes every once in a while, finance will get weird and they'll just take a big lump sum of money and you'll get a very small paycheck or none. And so then I have to come in behind everybody and try to get advances on your pay and fix that. So to get out in front of it, obviously everyone wants to get paid, wants to get paid correctly. So personal responsibility. Thanks.
So the question is it similar situation with BAH's base pay where we most likely won't receive it for the first few months of active duty? So you get paid BAH and base pay at the same time. It's one, it's called an LES. It's like your pay stub. It's both on there. There might be a disconnect between the two. There could be. So that's something you want to look at your LES every month and make sure you have your base pay, your BAS should be on there, and BAH should be on there as well.
And you can get paid wrong for your BAH, kind of like the shirt was saying. So when you're going on your LES, make sure that the zip code on your LES is the zip code for your base, because they're using the zip code of your base to determine how much BAH you get. So if an airman at finance accidentally fat fingers your zip code and puts in a different zip code, you're gonna be paid something you shouldn't be. So that's also part of it.
And also before you arrive to your new duty station, you can look up the BAH calculator. So if you're like, hey, I'm gonna go to this base, you just type in that zip code on the BAH calculator and it'll tell you exactly, hey, as a O1, you're going to make this much money as a O1 for your BAH. So
I have a question. I've never asked my cadre this, so I'm interested. You meet your sponsor or whatever, and you walk over to your shop, maybe together, maybe not. And just first impression wise, what do you say to your airmen? Is there some sort of an intro meeting set up already? Just kind of walk me through that if you don't mind.
So I'm space, so mine might be a little bit different. But I met my sponsor. He walked me to the commander support staff, the front office, got my in-processing checklist. And at that time, I was just waiting to go to training because training was a TDY. And so my responsibility was just to in-process until I got a training date. So I didn't meet any of the airmen that I was going to be supervising after training because I wasn't certified on the system. I wasn't, a certified space. I was just, a lieutenant without an AFSC training yet. So that was my experience to my first space bases. My job was to in-process, and then I left a couple weeks later to go to space training. So I didn't know, there wasn't a setup. And then when I came back, I got specifically trained in my mission set, the satellites that I flew, and then you just kind of meet the people while you're in training in the unit. Before I got like officially, you are commander and these are your troops, but you kind of already knew them already.
Yeah, it kind of depends on your career field and what job you're going to go into. So for me, I was an intel guy and I went to an ops job. And so in a lot of these jobs, there's like a morning huddle or a staff meeting, or there'll be something where you'll be introduced. Like, hey, we have a new lieutenant, that kind of thing. So that's how it was for me. I just went to the morning operations huddle to the flight I was in, and they said, hey, we have a new lieutenant. His name is Mo, and we, kind of went from there.
Question in there, this isn't related to moving our finances, but when do new lieutenants typically purchase / need their mess dress, if ever? So I bought mine immediately, just because for my financial, like if I'm going to pay $400 or $500, I want my price per wear to be as low as possible. So if I'm going to wear it as a lieutenant, then my price per wear is, only maybe $100 every time I wear it, as opposed to if I bought it later. But I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a regulation that actually says that officers are supposed to have mess dress. So I just went ahead and bought it.
Yeah, as a brand new second lieutenant, I went to work protocol and I had to wear mess dress every 6 weeks because I worked for Egypt. And so every 6 weeks I wore my mess dress. And the first week I got there, they're like, hey, you're doing this. And so I ran over to the uniform shop and bought my uniform. And you also get a one-time uniform payment of $500 that technically is supposed to help offset the cost of your mess dress. So be cautious.
Yeah, you'll need it. You don't want to be that officer who doesn't have it, because you'll need it for certain events. So at a basic level, your base will probably have a dining out every year. And then if you're in charge of troops, young airmen, their first education program they go to is called ALS, Airman Leadership School. And when they graduate from ALS, it's a very big deal. So it's typically a dinner with an award ceremony that's done on base, and you wear mess dress to that. So if you're supervising one of those airmen, you typically go as their officer, their flight commander. So don't be caught without it.
Yeah, it means a lot to them, and you don't want to be that person who didn't go just because you didn't have mess dress. Will we pay BAH based on the base, even if we live, for example, in a different county? You will be paid on the zip code of your base. So if I want to live an hour away because it's, I don't know, cheaper or more expensive, whichever, I'm going to be paid based on my zip code of my duty location, no matter where you live. Can you cover quickly how to get signed up for TRICARE?
So I responded in the chat.
Okay, see, awesome.
And I just said, we will resend the lieutenant guide out, and it has a whole page, chapter 5, the medical section, which outlines, hey, when can I start getting enrolled for TRICARE, and what does that process look like? Because you can get enrolled before you actually go to your first duty station. That's all outlined in that chapter.
Anybody else? All right. Nobody has anything else. We'll wrap this thing up. So it's been a pleasure, guys. Again, congratulations on your upcoming commissioning. We're thrilled to have you as one of us, and thank you for serving your country. We really appreciate it. So welcome to the team. And yes, I will send out the recording of this call. We'll also send out the slides that the presenters did. We'll send out the lieutenant guide again. There'll be a bunch of stuff for you guys to review and read. So we will all be available to answer any more questions you guys have outside of this. Don't let this be the only time you ask questions. All right. Cool. You guys be good and good luck on active duty.